Hey, Lee Robinson here at American Sentinel K9. In this video, we are going to take a closer look at Sorrells Pokey. Right, this is the dog, of course, right here. We'll get a better look at him in just a minute. And this is, of course, Bert Sorrells. Our program, we focus heavily on the Sorrells line. And if you want to learn more about the Sorrells line, you can go to my website and click on this page. And it'll take you to a page on our website where we talk about a little bit of history of the Sorrells bloodline as well as provide a long list of accomplished dogs from that bloodline, and then followed by a series of videos where we interviewed Madison Parker, who was one of the handlers and conditioners and even a breeder of many of the great dogs within the Sorrells bloodline. And he also discusses many of the dogs that influenced the Sorrells bloodline. But for now, let's jump over to Peds Online and let's get a closer look at Sorrells Pokey. Now, I met this dog myself in 2003 and again in 2004. I went down there a couple of times and I bred one of my females to this dog. And I can tell you that the dog was strong as an ox and he was very driven. And he was getting up there in age. I don't know what year he was born, but he was no longer a young dog, and that was obvious. Um, but he wasn't old. He was not an old dog, don't get me wrong, but he was certainly past his prime. Um, And Bert had about 50 dogs or so at that time, if I remember correctly. I can't give you a number, but it was a large number of dogs. And while that seems like a large number of dogs to me, let's remember that Bert Sorrells had about 100 dogs for nearly 30 to 40 years. So this man had thousands of dogs. And when I met him, one of the very first questions I asked was, "Who is your favorite female of all time?" And the reason why I like to ask that particular question to a number of breeders is because a lot of times it's very easy to find out information about the males that a breeder may have. Maybe they advertise that male. They have accomplished males that maybe do some sort of a performance venue, performance sport, where you might hear reports about the males, but you don't always hear about the females. So I asked him, "Who is your favorite female of all time?" And without hesitation, he said Sorrells Bandit. Actually, he just said Bandit. And if you look at this pedigree, in the third generation, we're going to have 8 dogs. Now, out of the 8, 4 of them are going to be males and 4 of them are going to be females. But if we look, we see Bandit 1, 2, 3 times. It makes me think that he must have been telling me the truth, that Bandit really was his favorite female of all time. So obviously the next question is why? And Mr. Sorrells told me that that's the only dog that he had ever had that never produced a cur. Now, Madison Parker and I discussed that, and it's in the video series that I have on my website right here, in fact, somewhere in here. And Madison said that that was not actually a true statement, that either I misunderstood or that Bert misspoke or something, but because really it was the Bandit Hard Eyes combination that never produced a cur. That when they had a litter, that every single pup in that litter had proven to be game, that there was not a cur in the bunch. All right. So what Madison says about that statement would be more believable because for a single dog to have this many offspring and never have a cur would be unbelievable. And the only way I could ever believe something like that was if a person did literally have thousands of dogs, which Mr. Sorrells did. However, even then, that would be really unbelievable. But to have a litter of a large number of dogs that not a one of them was a cur, that every single one of them proved game, even though that itself would be an amazing accomplishment, it is much more believable and much more likely. So Bandit was without a doubt an exceptional female, and she was a direct daughter of Shorty the Preacher, Sorrells STP, aka Shorty the Preacher. Shorty the Preacher was a dog that went 2 hours and 37 minutes with no out of holds and no turns. He was just a really exceptional dog. So there's a picture of Shorty the Preacher. There may be a couple of other pictures of him online. We can check and see real quick. but maybe not. I've got a few on my computer. But we'll back up and we're going to go back to Pokey's pedigree. So Bandit is in this Pokey dog 3 times. Now, what else do we see? We see Bubba Bo in here 3 times. One, two, three. And we see the Hard Eyes Bandit breeding, which never produced a cur. So here's some of Bert Sorrells' best uh, blood right there. And then we have some of his best again and some of his best again. But what's going on with this Bubba Bo and Raisin dog? Because we can see Raisin in there twice. So, in one of the interviews that I have with Madison Parker, he talks about the Bubba Bo dog. And he said that this Bubba Bo dog is one of the dogs that Bert Sorrells hung a pedigree on. That this is not his true breeding. That his top side was Baker Davis's scratch, and that his bottom side was either a bitch or a daughter of a stud named Baker Davis's Grasshopper. So it was scratch over Grasshopper. Now, I don't know if Grasshopper was the bitch or if it was the father of the bitch. So regardless of that, all of this blood would have gone back to Baker Davis's Boomerang because the scratch grasshopper combination was based off of the Boomerang blood. So that means Bubba Bo was a Boomerang dog, but Bert Sorrells did not want um, any accomplishments to go to Baker Davis. He wanted those accomplishments for himself, so he hung the pedigree of Sorrells Ch and Crazy Blondie over the Bubba Bo dog. Now, if that story was all I had, I might question it to some degree. However, after hearing that story and looking at how Bubba Bo was bred, I thought to myself, if I wanted to get a line, what would I do as a breeder if I wanted to preserve that line? Well, I'd want to get a bitch that was bred on Boomerang, and I'd want to take it back to my Boomerang male. So we have a male here that's Boomerang bred, and what does he breed it with? Well, we see that he's going to breed it with two things. One, he breeds it with Bandit. So there's Bandit and Bubba Bo, and Raisin is off of Bubba Bo, and he breeds that back to Bandit, his best bitch. The other thing you'd want to do to breed it is back to some more Boomerang blood, if that story is true. So let's take a look at Two Shoes, and we're going to see that indeed Two Shoes, her bottom side, goes back to a bitch named Miss Boomerang, and that Miss Boomerang was a daughter of Boomerang. So I think that Madison Parker's story about Bubba Bo is probably very true. The other reason why I would say it's very true is Madison Parker actually knows this Raisin dog very well. Madison Parker is the one that handled and conditioned this animal, and so he would have some inside information on how Raisin was truly bred. So for Madison Parker to tell me that Raisin was off of Bubba Bo and Two Shoes, and that Two Shoes goes back to Miss Boomerang, who's a daughter of Boomerang, and that the top side is Baker Davis's Scratch over Baker Davis's Grasshopper, and that this is basically a pure Boomerang bred dog. Well, why does that matter? Boomerang is possibly one of the top 5 uh, pit bulls of all time. The dog was just a phenomenal, phenomenal dog. Baker Davis said the dog was unbeatable. You can still find interviews about Baker Davis's Boomerang on YouTube. So we have basically a combination of Bert Sorrells' best right here with Sorrells' best and Sorrells' best with Baker Davis's best over Baker Davis with Baker Davis's best. So this dog is just an exceptionally well-bred dog. I think this dog's pedigree is put together, Pokey's pedigree is put together by a man that's raging against the dying of the light. That at this point in his game, he was downsizing and having to let go of a legacy that he had maintained for 40 years. And in doing it, what did he want to do? He wanted to take the best dogs that he ever had and breed them together and hold on to a little bit of his history. That's my opinion, and take it for what it's worth or dismiss it if you wish. Y'all take care and have a blessed day.